of viewers, well, let me just take you back in time for a minute. 6th February 1981, the now later General Eli Tumwine, may his soul rest in peace, as we have read, purportedly shot and by mistake the first bullet against the Kabamba attack, and 5 years down the road, Kampala fell to the hands of the NRA or /NRM guerrilla fighters. And much more shall be discussed regarding the professionalism of the UPDF, because we know that the president, in his speech this week, said that part of the reasons as to why they went to the bush was to fight the impunity, the corruption, and the unprofessionalism of the UNLF soldiers and other military organizations that we have had in this country. But also, most importantly, is the issue of the National Social Security Fund that has, taken a toll regarding, issues around corruption, issues around misuse of public office. And now we know that the Honorable Winnie Commission has been established to look deeper into, the nitty-gritties and what is happening exactly with NSSF. And to discuss and put this into perspective, viewers, I'm joined by a panel of distinguished young people. That is now my honor to introduce to you this afternoon, and in no particular order, the 80th GRC of Nkrumah Hall, for those who have gone to Makerere University, Osajefo. From Nkrumah Hall, and also founder of the Mark Bench, is Oremo. Oremo Odwee? Yes. Oremo Odwee. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Comrade and Ndugu, Moses Kidega, first and foremost for inviting me here for this very particular show that gets the views of the young people. Just to correct you a little bit, I am serving in the Makerere Guild as JRS in Civic Hall. I'm a statesman, not in Kuru.
Oh, not.
Yes. And I'm very delighted to be here. My name is Oremo Odwee. I'm looking forward to a very meaningful conversation here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, From the National Youth Council of Uganda, and precisely Jinja City, is Simon Peter Tusubira. Joining us for the first time. Simon, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kidega. I prefer calling you that. It is really swift for me. I prefer that one. I am really delighted. It is my first time being part of the civic space. And as young people, these are the lights that we need to be before. I am Tusubira Simon Peter, Secretary for Finance, Jinja City Youth Council. I'm also here maybe to also represent the people of Busoga, because I am Speaker of Busoga Youth Parliament. Wow. It's an honor to be here.
Very interesting. As you can see already, the panel is that of distinguished young people. And the next panelist, I'm sure will confirm that. Winnie Akidi Adile, who has been on this show before. Winnie is the African representative to the Generation Democracy Global Advisory Board. Wow. People are powerful.
Young people have to be empowered to be in such positions. But it's an honor being here and to share this space and platform to speak about the important opportunities that young people need to thrive in, especially given the topic that's happening. So thank you for hosting me here today.
All right, and last but not least on the show is Mr. Robert Kigongo, who is the Secretary General of Uganda Youth Coalition for SDGs. Robert, thank you for sparing the time.
Thank you so much.
Is that FDC?
Greetings to all viewers and greetings to the people of substance that I'm stayed with. As you heard, Robert Kigongo, our main duty at the Uganda Youth Coalition for SDGs, which was established by the UN in Uganda, under the National SDG Secretariat, is to make sure that there is meaningful participation of young people towards achieving the global goals, the 17 goals, the 17 SDGs of the United Nations, but in the spirit of leaving no one behind.
Wow, thank you. And the Youth Roundtable certainly leaves no one behind. Let me just start with you. One evening, 27 with 27 guns. I think there were about 41 brave young men decided that this country needed to change and took up arms and went to the bush, to fight a 5-year protracted People's Liberation War, as they used to call it. just as someone who is pursuing the journalism profession, what do we make of this particular incident? Is it something that you resonate to as a young person, that, some left Micho Hall, some left Nkuruma Hall and say, let's go and, oust this government? So as a young person, does such an event resonate to you as a person?
Yes, thank you very much, Comrade Kidega. I want to first and foremost commend the young Ugandans of that time, the patriotic citizens of this country, who saw it wise for this country to be liberated from the tyranny that it was undergoing. I need to draw you back to even the time when General Idi Amin captured power in 1971. And you look at that space from 1971 to 1979 when he was overthrown. Uganda was spattered and characterized by a lot of brutality, a lot of murdering of civilian Ugandans. People were being, packed in dungeons and being beaten for sometimes even no reason. When you come up to criticize the government on principle, you are seen as an enemy of the regime. So away from that, you realize that later the government of General Idi Amin was of course hosted with the support of the Tanzanian forces. And then we saw the coming back of the government of Obote II regime, which still came with a lot of handicaps, a lot of human rights violations. And so the decision that His Excellency the President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni made at that time to see to it that Uganda is liberated from tyranny was a very good one. That in an evening, they convened a team of young people in Machindye, in Matthew Ruchikaire's house, to launch the attack on Kabamba so that they could get maybe arms that they could use to foster the agenda they were having. The agenda was very good at that particular time. And I want to be very clear about this. The NRA, the National Resistance Movement, came on board to liberate Ugandans. And indeed, Ugandans were suffering. There was a lot of murdering of people. There was a lot of human rights violation. Since then, we are saying here that we're looking at UPDF at 42. Since then, from the time when they declared the 5 years war, we of course saw them capture Kampala in 1986. And later we saw the promulgation of the 1995 constitution that gave the UPDF existence. UPDF came in existence. It transitioned from NRA to UPDF in 1995.
Yeah.
Now, talking about UPDF particularly at this point in time, because in the initial days, the interest was good. The objective was very good. But at this point in time, we need to recognize that UPDF as an army is losing it.
Okay, just hold it right there. Let us first evaluate the events leading to 1986. And Robert, let me hear your own view of how you appreciate the events. 27 guns, young men launching a very dangerous initiative. How do you make that? Yeah.
One, there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation when it comes to this war.
Okay.
And I think that must also come to an end. The NRA/NRM has been alternating stories and also denying history. We all remember Mengo Palace was a barracks where the Obote and Amin soldiers were camping. It was the major barracks, as you see here today. It wasn't even Kabamba. So the breakdown, we had many guerrilla leaders. We had Kaida. We had the Moses Salis on the other hand.
Yeah.
If you all remember, the Katumba Amalas were belonging to different sections of rebels. So, but the epitome of this was a mismanaged election. Failure to respect democracy and good governance. Human rights violations that led to these people to join the liberation struggle. To remove, by then, an illegitimate, but which was legitimized by its term in office, the Obote government. So the Kaila group actually broke the first seal of the liberation struggle by striking Mengo Palace. That was the beginning of the war. Known to these people report us to a different story because they want history to favor them or to write history in their own name. So this must also come to an end. And civic space, we must make sure that we enlighten people to know the real stories that happened, the events that happened. There was an abuse of democracy. There was a mismanaged election that led to, and we had a presidential candidate who went to the bush, but to satisfy his desires of ruling Uganda. Remember, he started in 1972. So that story is not being reported when they are reporting this story of
1981?
of the 42 years. We should be counting from 1972. When Amin took power, they immediately started fighting because we all know Museveni is a brainchild of Obote. He immediately went to avenge for Obote when he went to Dar es Salaam and Mozambique to do those guerrilla wars. And even throughout that period, he was attacking places. He was robbing forex bureaus. So this is just, maybe it's just a seal that they shot the first bullet, but it's a lie. It's a lie. We are living in a lie. And we are celebrating a lie. It's very unfortunate. And I want to tell you, when you see a nation investing more money in military defense than its social welfare or the social transformation of the country, that country is facing a spiritual death, and that is Uganda.
Okay. Just put a full stop right there. Winnie, before we move towards evaluating what has the UPDF come, we are taking stock of its history and its foundation. And you can already hear different sides of the stories coming up. And I understand that because none of us lived in that time, all right? All we have done is read about it, and we can only read what the authors have written about it, you know? So just let's recollect your own perspective of this bush war and how it started.
Yeah, basically, basing on what, given the fact that the war actually happened when some of us actually not even planned for in this country, I believe if we are to recollect back to how the war started, personally, I'm of the opinion and the view that as a country, we need to take ownership of the events that happened and also ground ourselves on the actual history of the things that pushed for this, for the people to go to the bush and for the war to happen. Because I believe there's so much that is lost in there that actually will inform today's current government and the decisions that the citizens make in this country. And the fact that there's so many disputes that happened at that point, you get to realize that however much that the vision bearers that time were actually fighting for the citizens, for the country, at some point, given the divisions in terms of siding, or like, for example, how our comrades said, how Museveni was actually defending Obote at some point, but indirectly coming out as someone pushing for the team that he went with to war. It makes you realize the fact that some of the agendas were actually the same, but just the fact that people had independent visions in terms of what they really wanted to achieve for the country made them go to war, and at some point they lost the vision of what the war was entirely all about, fighting for the people, fighting for the government. And that is something that we're currently seeing. That's why you see there's so many disputes currently happening, and that's why you see the NRM is actually, the NRM government as well as the UPDF is currently completely detached from the citizens. Everyone is independently going on its own, and at some point you see the cahoot that happens. So I believe as the country and as the young people who are currently getting up to dominate and take up the spaces to speak over in terms of the things, the events that happened before, we need to ground ourselves and actually go deep and understand the history of how these events transpired, what contributed to them, the governments that happened before, the different people who took over office, because everyone had a role they played in that informed the bush that happened.
Wow, and thank you for that. Tusubira, we are trying to recollect events. And, how comes the Kawamba story, takes precedent over the rest? We know that there were the Ugandan freedom fighters, UFF, there are many other groups, FEDEMU and all these things. But, the story about the Kawamba attack, and the 5 years that followed, is it because that group and its leadership eventually, were able to take over power? I mean, what informs part of the story, in his words, that favors
Yes, thank you
the
very
current
much.
regime?
I think most of us here must have done history at a point. And in history, we study that the winner is the one who tells the story.
A dead man tells no tales.
Dead man tells not tales. So if there were any better people to tell the best story, they are not here because they are not the winners. But for the story that we have is that the first man to shoot the bullet was General Eli Tumwine, who died. So, but for me, I want to look at now the young people that were part of this struggle.
Yeah.
As young people who are here now, it is very unfortunate that we can't emulate exactly the very acts that this group did. We can't take the same measures to solving the problems. But I want to applaud the confidence that they had, the young people then. There might have been interests of leaders. For example, it was because of the loss of the election and because of the rigging that was in it, because it was not free and fair, that a certain leader came up and organized other young people to go and fight for their liberation. But now these young people that heed to his call, the ones that thought it wise to fight for their country, are the ones that, for me, I think the young people currently should look at. Do we, young people that are here, can we heed to somebody's call to change the status quo of the nation? It could be not to go to the bush, but something that is better. The young people were suffering. They were suffering. Somebody may have had reasons of elections, but it is true that they are suffering. There was an army that was mistreating people, and there was no economic growth. People were being sidelined. Even up to that time, there was tribal conflicts, and here and there was that discrimination in tribe, which is not exactly what is happening now, but somehow it is the same. So there were problems that were in the country, but young people put in their boots and they went and fought for their country. Such a thing, I think, should be applauded, should be put out there. Young people should know that we have the responsibility to fight for our nation if ever we feel that this nation needs to be changed. And currently, I'm very sure we are not at our best. Yes, some things are going very well. Generally, somebody can say we have peace. There are countries that are still having war. I was watching a video of Cameroon. The young people there are facing a lot of insecurity. There is tragedy. I can term it that way, because the video that I watched, young people were playing basketball and all of a sudden they were shooting. So they had to stop playing, and then, to protect yourself from stray bullets, you have to lie down. They went down and they were protected. Now, there is no peace. At least here in Uganda, you can play basketball. You can do certain things. Out there, it is not there. So somehow we have the peace that was caused by these people that went to the bush. But there are the many problems, challenges that the young people are facing now. Now, can the young people emulate the confidence that the young people then had to go to the bush? Can we take extreme measures? Right now, we can't look at solutions as holding guns and going against a government. But there are better ways of democracy. Can we have young people come up for leadership? Can they vie against maybe the elderly that are causing tragedy to them? So for me, that is what I would look at.
Wow, very interesting. Let me just get back to you. And then to pick it up from where you had stopped. Because if you look at the NRA revolution or guerrilla war, it falls in the description of what Hans Kelsen described as legitimate coups and legitimate revolutions. Where you overthrow a constitutional order. But the point that I want us to evaluate, and picking up from where you had stopped, is that comparing the reasons as to why these young men went to the bush vis-a-vis what we have today, is there a fundamental change?
Yes,
because it's you who mentioned issues like human rights and all those things.
Exactly.
So let's compare.
Comrade Kidega, the fact that we must appreciate is that Uganda was suffering prior to these young people going to the bush. That is a fact that we cannot run away from.
Are Ugandans still suffering?
Let me come. I'm building up. Now, always at the beginning of a struggle, appreciation of the struggle is always seen. You know, when the young boys stormed Kampala and they captured the country, there was a lot of jubilation around the country. People were happy because they saw a liberation. And I want to thank the goal, the objective that inspired the attack in Kabamba and generally liberating Uganda, because indeed we were suffering. The young people who went to the bush had very good intentions for the people of this country. But as we speak right now, and you know, from that time, building up to this point in time when we are saying the army has now existed for 42 years. If we go into assessment, you realize that as an army, as a force, the UPDF has lost it. You know, whereas we appreciate UPDF from the aspect of Pan-Africanism, you know, there are a lot of, you know, activities running around the African continent. There have been safeguarding and helping to restore peace in Somalia, to protect the common people. They did very good works in South Sudan, in the Central African Republic, searching for the LRA rebels, you know, to bring them to book. But I want us to draw back to, it's a very good point. I'm a Pan-Africanist myself, and I believe we should work together and live together as Africans. But when you get back to Uganda, I want to assure you that we have lost it. We cannot say we are protecting the Somalis when here in Uganda we have lost it. We have a force that is directly participating in, you know, tormenting the people of this country. How do you try civilian Ugandans in the court martial? You have seen very many times they have dragged Ugandans to marching. They are not supposed to be there. Ugandans are supposed to be taken to the courts of the civilians. If you check in the Constitution, in the UPDF Act, the UPDF is supposed to uphold democracy and ensure that the rights of the Ugandans are not violated. Rule of law and good governance of this country. But we have an army that is partisan. And I want to call upon the politicians outside there, the Ugandan politicians, that, you see, we love our army very much. Please, in your politics, in your political activities, keep the army out. Because if, for example, if I refer to the statement that Honorable Anita, the former member of parliament for Koboko, made one time on media, that we have the Maje, you have the Maje as what? We must have an army that is independent, that do not report to anyone, because the army is supposed to be non-partisan. But if a politician says, we have the army, what kind of country are we living in? So for me, I believe that the UPDF initially had a very good cause for this country, but along the way they lost track. That we have a lot of abductions in the country, and sometimes these things are done by the soldiers. You have soldiers caning people on the streets of this country. What will the police do? You know, the role of the army is not to maintain law and order. There's a very big distinction between the police and the army. We shouldn't have the army on the streets beating people. You see, Comrade Kidega, I always get very disappointed when I walk on the streets of this country. You see, when a Ugandan sees a military man, the heart starts pumping. You know, someone wants to run away from such people. But we should have a country where my brother, Comrade Tusubira, will see an army man, will see a soldier, and if he's in danger, will be willing to run on the chest of the soldier. Because the army is supposed to protect the citizens.
All right, fair enough. And I get where you're coming from. Robert, let me get to you. One of the best constitutional lawyers in this country, or justices in this country, George William Kanyehamba, when you're deciding the case of Tinyefunza versus the Attorney General, which involved a military officer, of course, versus the government, he said that, and I quote, that when deciding such cases, courts must be very conscious not to interfere with matters between the executive and the military forces. So in so doing, what he imputed was that, you know, the executive and the UPDF must be able to work together. Now, how do we then achieve independence if courts have said that, these two organs somehow must work together. So there is almost an amalgamation between the executive and the UPDF. So how do we then achieve independence?
One, this and not any other reason. A tyrant first appears as a protector. And then he manipulates you. I'll revert to your question. My brother here talked of the confidence the young people had then. But I want to tell you, these were victims. First, the craft of war. You kill the parents, create orphans, recruit the orphans. The orphans will fight the war. They were simply victimized. And this happened in Uwero. We know the facts. You may never know. They created orphans and they used orphans to fight the war. The orphans were only revenging for their parents. And also the tribal, the Uganda lift that was between Obote and then
Mengo.
It was also another spark of manipulation. That's why the war was fought here. We have the UPDF Act.
Okay.
But it's different from having the Act and then doing what is in the Act. So we must follow by the Act. We must follow that Act, every section. That UPDF Act protects the UPDF from interference, from political interference. So it's a good guidance for us to abide by. But then, who has the mandate to make sure that this Act is in place? One, you the citizens and the parliamentarians who have a duty to follow up on all acts that are being implemented.
That's right.
So the UPDF and the executive, it goes back way back in history. It comes back to people who are in the UPDF. They are the people who who recruited these people. It's the executive that recruited these people. But however, this act is in place to protect the UPDF from political interference. That's why you can see that the executive went and invaded his own or started his own unit called SFC. Because the UPDF was not following his script. So he started, today as we talk, SFC is almost as big as UPDF. That means himself, he knows the backlash of interfering in UPDF work. And he knows the strength of UPDF if it chooses to stand by the UPDF Act, that it will definitely tell him no. I've had a story in the UPDF high forums or the meetings where General Arunda used to crash with the president's son over UPDF. They are called the Security Council meetings, high-level Security Council meetings. General Arunda was always passionate about protecting the UPDF. Though the executive and then the offspring of the executive wanted to manipulate the UPDF. I think this led to even the son being appointed the SLC commander so that they have their own army that can preside over their activities. While the other wing wanted to protect the UPDF. So you can see there's been some efforts to try to protect the UPDF. But see, what do? You entrench your kleptocratism or oligarchy into the UPDF. So what do? You start promoting your officers from SFC to UPDF. The way you can see that police has been militarized. You have your own army, personal army called SFC, which is not even supposed to be SFC because it was SRB to PPG. Now it is SFC. Now you get the senior officers from SFC and then you deploy them in UPDF. So someone who has an indictment to advance SDG 16, which states strong peace, justice, and strong institutions. But I want to focus on strong institutions. The only way we can protect our country is through having strong institutions. But Africa generally has had a challenge. It creates strong men than strong institutions. That's why regimes don't survive. Success doesn't survive past that regime of that ruler. It collapses with that ruler because we've created strong men than strong institutions. So, but it is the role of the UPDF and a conscious of the UPDF to restore the sanity in UPDF and the sanity in Uganda. Once we shall have that consciousness from the UPDF, we shall have sanity in Uganda. The executive will respect the boundary and the independence of the UPDF. So it's upon the UPDF officers to have that conscious that this country is beyond us. It's for our country, it's for the future generations.
Wow, very interesting. Winnie, he mentioned institutions. He mentioned separating the UPDF from politics, and I want to just combine those two submissions. But to bring it to the institution of parliament, the 1995 Constitution did enact a provision that that has the UPDF represented in parliament. All right. So how do we contextualize that reality with the dream of having the UPDF not being part of partisan politics? I mean, how do you achieve this when they are part of the temple of democracy, which is parliament? They are there and listening from different sides of the coin. Are they going to be partisan if they are part of such an institution?
I think at this point we shouldn't be asking ourselves if they're going to be partisan, because already, if we are to see the reality, you already see that they already belong to a particular party. But nonetheless, as it still draws back to the context, as I said, the vision changed. And just as Comrade also shared that the mandate of the UPDF is not supposed to get involved into politics. Now, the representation in parliament just brings out that as the reality of the context that's happening in the country. Because if you're to see that however much UPDF as an independent institution, it's being ruled by people who are both in politics and also both are ruling the institution itself. That's why however much you try as much as possible not to politicize the institution, you realize that they'll always fight for the representation in parliament. But then also, if we were to see from the other side of the coin, being a very big institution that's actually having so much influence from the other people that surround it, for example, let's say other institutions, for example, different ministries, the different parliamentarians, aside from us seeing them being involved in the parliament themselves, you get to realize that they also themselves need to have that voice. And I believe that may be one of the forces that influence their representation in parliament, because however much they try to be as neutral as possible, you realize that the forces that surround their engagements, and also the fact that they're supposed to protect the rights of the citizens, pushes them to also have that involvement. And being a country that is multi-partisan, we realize that however much some of these issues that we try to address in terms of institutionalizing some of these institutions, you get to realize that different parties will always play a role in this. And for me, from my own view, this is my opinion as me, I believe that however much we try not to push for it to be there, it will always have to be there, because they influence a lot of the decisions that the parliament makes. And also in terms of periods where, like for example, during elections, you get that there's so much involved in the processes. So you realize that there's, however much we don't want them involved, that they'll always be involved. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Tusubira, still on the issue of UPDF vis-a-vis politics or vis-a-vis public service. The new normal today is that you have UPDF holders who are either in active capacity or in retired capacity serving in the public service. Just mention them: General Katumba Wamala, Minister of Works, General David Muhoozi, State Minister of Internal Affairs, and the list goes on and goes on. The permanent secretary to the Ministry of Agriculture. As we discuss the evolution of UPDF, is this part of its evolution?
In fact, he wishes to say something there.
And taking contracts. They've now been allocated contracts that are supposed to be done by the private sector. Now they're supposed to build roads, hospitals. So this is actually militarizing even the business sector and also taking out the opportunities. So this is this service.
Military officers being military officers is also public.
It's
public service.
Yeah.
So they are just doing the same thing. Now, it is only coming out that they are competing with the citizens.
Are
But-
the citizens also?
They are citizens. They only have a role of security, and this security is not from within but from outside. Now, there is this context of UPDF, the security. Which security do they offer? We have the police that is supposed to protect the people and their property. Which security does the UPDF offer? I think we mostly have to look into this. Myself, I think they should be offering security from outside. If there is anything coming from outside, anybody, for example, the ADF, it's not within, but there's a way it destabilizes our security inside here. There may be people who think they are from within us, but the kind of insecurity they cause is regarded something that comes from outside. Now, that service that they give is to protect us from all that other insecurity. I want to go back to this question of why they are serving in public sectors. Okay, things that would be given to citizens that are not in service of the army. We've had issues of corruption. We've had very many issues here and there in service where people are not effective, or maybe people are not committed. People have a lot of self-interest, and these are people that have not gone through some training, leadership training, people that are not patriotic. We doubt their patriotism, their love for the country. Most of these challenges, they have answers in the military. You will understand that whenever we are having people who are going to public service, be it URA officers, I've seen some go to Chankwanzi for training. The training they get there, somehow it is like military training. This paints a picture that anybody who is in uniform has been taught some leadership training, or they've gotten some leadership experience, but also their patriotism is just so high. We expect these people to be honest. Their rate of integrity should be very high, and therefore their effectiveness, their efficiency should also be high. Now, that somehow justifies the president's behavior of always appointing the army into major things, but also who is in the public sector, the ministers. General Katumba Wamala, he's also he's a member of parliament representing the army. Now that goes to a question of the constitution. The constitution allows him to be member of parliament, and as member of parliament you can be appointed as minister, and so he's legally there. That maybe could also make me want to comment on why they're in parliament. We have a history of where there has been a lot of instability in Uganda, but it has always been caused by the army itself. The first one that we received was between Idi Amin and Obote. Okay, there had been ones before of
1966 Pigeonhole Constitution.
Now those ones were civilian-like, and it was a power struggle. But now this one where the army came in, and then the president could not even come back. After that, Amin himself, Obote coming back to Uganda, it was still the army. He had to, because we would think that now we've gotten a president, Idi Amin, let's take him away by maybe democratic ways of election, which didn't happen. So the army solved that thing. Even when we had Obote, it was still the army that could take him away. Now the army is being constant in our problems. To solve that, a Musevenist would say the intelligent Museveni had to bring the army into parliament to make parliament part of decision making, such that they would not have to go to war to solve issues. But maybe they would also first adopt means of discussing roundtable talks before they bring in extreme measures.
Okay, because you are justifying their presence in parliament, all right? But
yes.
then how do you explain the fact that the UPDF MPs sit on the side of government? If you're conscious to notice, they sit on the right
Exactly.
hand
Now,
of the speaker,
yes.
which is where, you know,
that is government.
is.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to go to something else, but I want to again rebut that. They are not supposed to sit there.
where should they sit?
If there are seats that are, is it besides?
Independent,
but,
like the ones in front of the speaker.
That is why I've
down
been
there.
seeing them. Only that the ones who are already holding executive positions sit on the side of government. Because, yes, they are serving the government. So they sit there. But they are supposed to sit, and they've already sat opposite the speaker. That is according to how I see it. But also, I want to quickly go to the one of why is the security, the UPDF being partisan. One of the roles of the army is to protect the government, and that is constitutional. Who protects
To protect
the government?
to
Yes.
protect
Please.
territorial
Integrity.
territorial
Yes.
sovereignty. Territorial sovereignty.
Now,
to protect
The integrity
That's
of
the
our
sovereignty.
country.
Yes.
Let's look at
Not
sovereignty.
conquest.
No, let's look at sovereignty. Being sovereign is being
Territorial
able
sovereignty.
to rule over, and that means somebody who is governing.
That's
no,
Now,
And
if
you see,
territorial
comrade.
sovereignty is that the UPDF must protect
The
our
territory.
territory from any external aggression that could undermine
Not
our
necessarily
sovereignty.
the
Comrade,
government,
Kidega,
but
Yes,
just-
this is part of the bigger problem we are having in this country. That our army
it's
that's
supposed
supposed to protect the people of this country has been, turned into a tool of protecting a regime. Are you getting the point? It's not protecting the government. We are supposed to be protected as a country. There is Uganda outside the government we have today, and there was Uganda before the government we have today. So the army has a fulcrum. Its fulcrum is on the people and the country. Our integrity as a country that is not bowing down to any other country.
For example, if we had
That's
ADF
right.
attacking Uganda, who would protect it?
If we had what?
ADF attacking Uganda.
That is Uganda. Uganda and
No.
ADF.
Yeah.
Yes, but it would be
The
the army,
UPDF, yes.
the UPDF
Yes.
to protect.
Because that is our army.
Because that is
As Ugandans.
that's an external aggression
What
into
is
the
the
country.
aim of ADF? To oust government. And
As long as
what
it's
are they
reflecting-
protecting?
Terrorist
They are
groups,
protecting.
As long as
terrorist
it's
groups
Now,
have
we
terrorist
are
groups
all
have
trying
several
to be-
interests.
We are
Actually, it's Islamism. That is the goal of ADF.
but
Terror groups have different motives and different intentions, all right?
Yes.
But I think the point being raised here is that the UPDF, its sole responsibility is to protect
the
the
citizens.
country,
The country.
the country and
not
the
a
country,
regime, as OO is saying.
now we are only being extreme. I wanted to bring out a point.
Because a regime comes and goes, right?
Yes, that is true. That is very true. I only wanted to bring out the point that if at all anybody threatens the government and is it in a way that is not democratic, that can be handled by the army. That is for sure true. You get. I don't want to be. I'm not trying to bring out
So
the fact
you
that
are
I'm not
inviting the
justifying-
army
I'm not justifying
to commit violence against the citizens.
No,
Mm.
that is again very wrong.
Against
Yes.
citizens who have criticized bad governance.
That is very wrong.
Citizens
Very
who are
well.
exercising
Their rights.
their right to
In
dissent.
fact,
Their
Their
constitutional mandate.
constitutional right to
comment.
dissent
That is trying
and
to put words in my
participation.
mouth.
Okay,
That is
but-
trying to put words in my mouth. I don't justify the acts of army caning. For example, in lockdown, when the army was
I want to bring
caning,
in OO, just wrap it up. Yeah.
Let me try to wrap it up. But the president of Uganda, being commander in chief, gives him authority to use the army, and that is constitutional. The way
what
he
purpose?
uses it,
Yes.
the way he uses it
Should be
is
question.
what we
should
should question.
question.
But
All right.
he has the authority.
Yes, thank you. And I want to bring you on this part and the issue of professionalizing the army. One of the key issues that General Mugisha Muntu is and shall be remembered for is his contribution towards the professionalizing of the army. But if you look at this, the idea of making it a professional institution, I think now it is more hinged on academic qualifications. If you look at General Mbadi's CV, most of his qualifications are academic in nature. They are not exactly one of someone who has been at the forefront of so many wars, but rather one of someone who has gone gone to Sandhurst, who has gone to, I was trying to read here, that he has gone through so many military trainings in Lusaka, and, you know, so how do we evaluate professionalizing of the army? Is it about the academic qualifications or the military institutions that you've attended, or it's about, you know, how many battles have you fought, how many instances have you put your life at the line for the sake of Uganda? So which way is it?
I think on the question of professionalizing Uganda's force, like you've said, General Mbadi is a man who is well read, a man who is very educated. But observing the recruitments that UPDF has been having, I think in the past 10 years, you realize that when recruitment periods come, there are provisions which are put in for people to follow, those who would love to join the army. I have seen announcements being made that today in Ukololo, we are going to be recruiting medical professionals. Tomorrow, on the 17th, we are going to be recruiting people who are in the engineering field. And for me, this one is all explained by what my brother was grappling with to explain, that we have a force that is nearly capturing the whole public service, that is capturing all operations in this country, that if Nambole has to be repaired, we deploy the engineering department of UPDF to go and do the work. And for me, I believe that perhaps is the objective of the president, His Excellency, the president, who is also the commander-in-chief. He has reached a point where he believes that no civilian can do good work except the soldiers. We have the soldiers in the agricultural soldiers. We have them in the lands, or what you would love to call Operation Wealth Creation. We have the engineers repairing Nambole. We have them building bridges. We have them running a lot of engineering projects in this country. We have facilities, health facilities in this country, having nurses, having doctors who are soldiers. So the professionalization, I can at least try to give credit there, because they have taken people who are learned. You see, my uncle, my elder uncle, he was retired recently. He joined President Museveni immediately after he had captured power, but he was a P7 dropout, and he managed to rise to the level of being a major. But General Museveni's intention is to have an army that cannot just, having an army that is not just intended to hold a gun, but also have administrative skills. If you have a well-educated Mbadi, he's going to be in position to make comprehension. If it comes to decision making, he can think. He can draw maybe from the lessons he has learned, the theories he has learned all over the world. Now coming to your question of the particular military training, for example, someone who went to Sandhurst, maybe someone went to Paris military school, and I think that is for a very few cadres who particularly are put in that line, because they are groups of cadres they pick when they're young. I have had a chance to stay in Nakasongola Army Barracks, and there is an institution there for Air Force where they pick a one Kidega when he's in maybe senior 2, senior 3, and they say, you are going to study military aircraft. You're going to study aircraft for the rest of your life. They groom you. You don't study any other thing. They groom you from there. They take you to another institution outside there, and they groom you in that line. But on the question of professionalization, I think we are fair. We are fair. Recruitment is now based on at least some academic.
Because let me just read for you General Mbadi, who is our chief of
CDF,
Chief of Defense Forces. He completed a diploma course in strategic studies in the University of Nairobi. He is a graduate of Masters in Strategic Studies from the from the Air War College, Maxwell, based in Alabama, in the USA. He is a graduate who attended the Mobile International Defense course in Lusaka, Zambia. I mean, that and many much more. He's an officer cadet who attended the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst, UK. So the guy has attended so many, military training.
You see.
Yeah, but I want to bring in Robert. Robert, I think it's you mentioned the issue of human rights, all right?
The UPDF is actually breaking all records of human rights violation from the previous regimes. But this is a subject of rarity to an individual or to a regime, that they have forgotten the UPDF Act, they have forgotten their cardinal duty, which is pacification, not conquest. So this brings us to a point of where we have to make a choice as Ugandans, but the role of Ugandans is to incite the consciousness of the UPDF. The UPDF has a choice to make. Either they choose conquest or pacification. It's upon us, the citizens, to remind them, to awaken their consciousness that they have to choose pacification over conquest. So with pacification, they'll have to defend the sovereignty of the country than conquest, where they will be defending a regime or defending an individual. Because whatever threatens the regime or this individual called Museveni and Musevenism and Musevenization will attract the UPDF to do the acts that they do. And also, climate justice is a human right. The UPDF is also on record of plundering and looting and also abusing wetlands, wetland degradation. If you look at some of the wetlands that are being degraded, they are degraded by the UPDF officers. The UPDF officers have a mandate to protect our natural resources besides the sovereignty. But if they are at the forefront of being used as tools of wetland degradation, deforestation, all types of climate abuses. So it's a disservice that they are doing to Ugandans, and it's a discredit that we should give to them. So human rights violations do not even stop with torture, abductions, but it goes beyond. It goes up to climate justice. So it's upon us, the citizens, to remind them and to awaken their consciousness. And this must begin with you, the listener, and all the people of substance, to awaken that consciousness of the UPDF as we seek for a strong institutions, an independent UPDF that is very much independent from the political interference that is coming from the executive, because their cardinal work is to protect our sovereignty, to protect our natural resources, including the wetlands and the forests, which they are cut, which they have degraded.
All right, thank you. Winnie, as we take a short commercial break, the question of the UPDF and women, all right? I think in the NRA Bushwo, there was a woman, I cannot recollect the name. Narweso. Brigadier Narweso. You know, so as we discuss the evolution of the UPDF, how have the women taken up space in the UPDF? Because I know that until about 3-4 months ago, the spokesperson of the UPDF was Brigadier General Bekwaso. You know, so let's evaluate the UPDF and women. Is there a fair share of women taking up spaces in the UPDF?
Thank you very much, Kidega, for
or
the
in
question.
security generally?
Generally, I'll say if we're to look back in the context of Uganda being a very traditional country, like rooted into the cultural context of the different tribes, realize that majority of women haven't really been taking up the security, like security forces, especially if you're to start looking at the, let's say, the strongholds of, for example, security companies. You get to realize that currently majority of the people working in security companies are women. Then if you're to move as far as going to other civil service entities, for example, the Uganda prisons, the police, you realize also the recruitment processes is also encouraging a lot of women to get in and also join such forces. And then if we are to look back into the UPDF, generally, from society context and perspective, people believe that the UPDF does so much heavy work, which involves so much gun violence and using a lot of, for example, going to bush. For example, the fact that how Uganda deploys the UPDF to other countries into really war context countries.
Operation Shuja.
Yeah, exactly. You realize that the fact that women are considered vulnerable, weak at some points. Most times they were actually not recruited in these forces because of the fact that of the magnitude of the kind of work that these people do when they're recruited to deployed for missions. But nonetheless, you see that the stereotyping around that is being broken. And if you're to see for the last 5 years, if you're to see the trends in the military, you get to realize that different women are actually getting into the military. And as I must say also, you also get to realize a trend in the young people, especially women who are actually getting recruited in this. And it's really a win for women, given the fact that it's breaking stereotype and also contributing to the gender sensitivity bit in terms of seeing who is strong, who is not. But then it neutralizes the fact that as citizens of the country, we're able to contribute towards the country's development and security by attributing our efforts, and also the fact that you also spoke earlier on in terms of professionalism, because these days the different sectors in the military that comes up. So different women are getting in, and that is a very key win, especially when it comes to what our brother does in terms of the SDGs, promoting gender equality and also employment for young people and leaving no one behind. So I say it's a win-win in terms of women representation in the UPDF, and also in terms of the rankings. Not that they're just in the lower rankings of the UPDF, but you get to see that women are rising past the lower ranks across the different sectors, not just the UPDF, but also different forces, the police, the Uganda Prison Services, and then also the military. So it's a win, and also a good plus for those who are advancing gender equality in terms of women involvement and participation. Yeah.
Wow. Well, to the viewers, because there's so much English being spoken in here, we'll allow you to take a short commercial break, get that bottle of water, just sip it, but just don't move your muscle, because in a minute or so, we shall be back here continuing with this conversation. See you shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break, and thank you for your continued company with us on the Youth Roundtable. Well, let's just wrap it up with the UPDF at 42, and Tusubira, you will kick us off after this commercial break. And the question is, for example, you look at Usalama kwa wote, which means literally that peace for everybody, is a UPDF operation to pacify Karamoja. Karamoja has had, endless conflict for, I think, over coming to 2 years, cattle rustling and all these things. Has the UPDF failed to deal with managing some of these internal insecurities?
Thank you very much. About Karamoja, I first of all want to convey my deep sympathies to the region of Karamoja. Whereas Uganda is endowed with good weather, good climate, Uganda has all the green pastures, and that is why it is the pearl of Africa. We have these beautiful mountains everywhere. For Karamoja, it turns out to be a little different. Their only resources in gold, which they cannot use as the very common person cannot use the gold to become rich. And then the only thing they are left with is the cattle. Now, for me, I even sometimes tend to feel for the riders. Maybe they are just becoming extreme because of the hunger. You've not seen a hungry person. A hungry person can become really so rowdy. When hunger hits a human being, they lose their morals. That is even evident in every one of us here. When you are hungry, somehow you do things that are extreme. Things that people would not expect you to be doing. Now, the hunger in Karamoja is the biggest cause of that insecurity. When the army comes in, it is coming in to solve a problem of hungry people. Yes, they are anger, but they're angry but hungry. They are angered by the hunger that they are facing. So whereas UPDF is trying its best, the biggest solution to Karamoja is not the army and the guns. The fundamental solution should be looking at how have the people of Karamoja helped themselves to get food for every day, not one that will only end today. Whereas UPDF is trying to solve the conflict of the people riding this side and this side. In fact, it involves Teso. The people from Teso are lamenting. People hate anybody that comes from Karamoja because of the history that has been there. People had cut themselves, slaughtered each other. But it is only because of the anger in Karamoja. The country should be looking at solving the problem of the hunger in Karamoja. Let us see, we need to be looking at how have we made water accessible so that they irrigate, they start farming, yes, they improve on their cattle, the breed and all that. Now the army can try to solve this, but it will not be fundamental. It will not last long. It will always come back, as you have said here, that it has been there over and over. It will always come back. If only we solve the problem of hunger in Karamoja, most of the problems there will be solved.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. It's you who made the argument of the UPDF being a Pan-African army, and perhaps they draw this ideology from one of the four core values of the NRM, which is Pan-Africanism. But if you look at the African Union mission in Somalia, the UPDF is a part of it. You look at MONUSCO in DRC Congo, which is a United Nations intervention, still the UPDF is part of it. You look at the UN mission in South Sudan, Uganda is a part of it and UPDF. You look at Operation Shuja, is a brainchild of the UPDF. I don't know, how do you evaluate the level with which we have exported security across the region? But how do you compare this with the continuous insecurity in the country, like we have seen in the past, police posts being attacked by unknown assailants, all right? We have seen the twin bombs that happened last year, all right, here in Kampala. So how do you compare our pride in exporting security vis-a-vis the insecurity that is happening back home?
Yes, thank you once again, Comrade Kidega. The question of UPDF, lending support to the different African countries is a very good cause that I want to, I want to give them a gratification. I want to applaud them for that because some of us who believe in the school of thought of great Pan-Africanists like the Julius Nyerere, the Osage for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah,
yes.
We really believe that time should come when we have a borderless Africa. That we look at us, so we believe in the aspect of Nduguism. So the question of taking forces to Somalia is a very good one. In the Shuja operation, in the Central African Republic, is very good. It's a very good cause. But when we come back to Uganda internally, you realize that there's an aspect of hypocrisy. One of the reasons that made the Bourbon monarchy to fall in France was the pretense of King Louis to send troops to fight in the American War of Independence. Yet the same thing the soldiers were going to fight for in such countries were happening inside France. And so you take forces to go and work in Somalia, to go and work in Congo, which is a good thing, but you've left very many handicaps at home, because they say charity begins at home. We have problems in the country, we have a lot of challenges in the country, but a lot of finances are put in facilitating these operations. Even when the AU is putting money into these projects, but also there is a contribution from our own government in preparation, preparing these people. There's always preparation before any project is launched. So I believe the management of UPDF needs to prioritize, first of all, our problems. Then we can go to address the continental matters. He has just been talking about the question of Karamoja. Karamoja has issues with even the neighboring communities. The Itesots and the Karimonjongs are always conflicting.
The Turkana in Kenya.
Yes, the Turkanas, we have the people from Ethiopia also coming into Karamoja. We have a lot of guns in houses. Are you getting people? You find a child of 18 years having a gun, and he knows. I talked to a boy at Makerere University who who told me, should President Museveni fall, his first thing to go and do at home is to just go and settle there, raid. Because for them, they want nothing else in this world apart from having animals. And how do they get the animals? If they shoot Kidega and they take his 15 cows, that's what gives them pride. So I think UPDF should prioritize our problems by solving the question in Karamoja.
So have they failed? Because Karamoja continues to be...
They have. Of course, there's a lot of failure there. People have guns in the house. That is a failure by the UPDF. They should mobilize and collect all the guns in community. Because
But how does this resonate with you? That a country that has capacity to export security to Somalia cannot deal with an area like Karamoja?
That is the hypocrisy that we are talking about. You know, we should allow ourselves to go beyond the publicity that we want to see on us, that we are working very well to ensure that Somalia is calm. When we are not calm, if you have two brother communities fighting, Itesots fighting with the Karimojong, that is a failure. And you see Karamoja operates like it's a demobilized state from Uganda. I don't know if you have had a chance to go to Amudat. Me have been to Amudat. You find someone wearing a short and he's having his gun on the back. He's looking after his animals. You ask yourself, are these people in Uganda? Why should a civilian have a gun in the first place? And these guns are the ones that are used to terrorize the neighboring communities. You find the other ones also have, and also there's a question of, you know, there's an influx of these machines also sometimes from the neighboring countries. Because I've had interactions with people from Karamoja. They say some of them buy guns from South Sudan, others from Ethiopia, others from Kenya. So the question of protecting our country is still the role of the UPDF. You know, protecting the integrity of this country. If we don't want to live in a society like Sudan where everyone has a gun in his house and he just shoots if he is annoyed. So I think UPDF should put priority because, you know, quoting from the Act, the UPDF Act, their prime role is to ensure that they protect the integrity, the sovereignty of Uganda, but also ensuring that Uganda is calm internally. We don't want to have wars among Ugandans because UPDF has allowed people to have guns. UPDF has allowed the external forces to bring guns in our country to destabilize us.
Wow, fair enough. Robert, as we get final comments regarding this topic, is I want to draw your attention to the International Court of Justice ruling of 2021 that declared that Uganda and its military had participated in the plunder in DRC Congo. But also this goes back to the 1967 incident, I think 1967, 68, around there, where still our army was accused of plundering gold and timber from Congo. So today there is a financial burden levied on us as a country that we have to pay on the premise of our soldiers participating in Congo, going there prima facie to, you know, to fight, was it Kabila? No, to install Kabila, then, you know, getting to be deviated here and there. So the professionalism of the UPDF vis-a-vis the financial burden that now exists on us as a country. But also, how do you explain the fact that we are constructing roads in DRC Congo and all these? So the aspect of the discipline of the UPDF.
It comes back to us, the choice that we have to make. And the choice is one. We have to transfer from kleptocracy to democracy. We have kleptocrats who have created an anarchy of looting and plundering. And it doesn't even stop in the country. It goes to the neighboring countries. So the UPDF has become a tool of plundering and looting in the neighboring countries. And it has also been used as a machinery. We've become machineries in other foreign countries, promoting foreign interests. For example, if we look at the issue of Somalia, it's a foreign interest that we are promoting because we are paid, our soldiers are paid. But in the due course of being paid, they are also manipulated. Because if a soldier is supposed to earn $1,000, and instead of being
Robert,
given...
aren't you being unfair in your analysis? Because if you look at the era that we live in today, is one of transnational terrorism. That you have Boko Haram in Nigeria, but they orchestrate violence across the globe. That you have Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, but their operations cut across Africa, Asia, You have ADF in Congo, but their violence goes to Rwanda and things like that. So is it fair for you to say that if there is insecurity in Somalia, then that cannot be transferred to Uganda, and therefore Uganda should not have interests in the peace and stability of Somalia?
Under what circumstances?
Because what would be the foreign interest, for example, if I'm to ask? And if that foreign interest exists, is it much more worthy than the interests of Uganda? Because that insecurity could spill over to Uganda so easily. Somalia is less than, I mean, if you look at the map.
Few kilometers.
Yes.
The terrorism you call terrorism is a result of vengeance. For example, if ADF had attacked us here or attacked us here, it's as a result of a revenge of what we did in their areas of interest, let's say in Somalia or in DRC. So they come back here to avenge. So meaning what goes around comes around. So the UPDF is actually provoking more wars outside. Actually, they are exporting wars internally. That shouldn't have been the case. And it's upon our consciousness to create more civic awareness within the UPDF. We should engage them that, hey, look here, you are doing something wrong. The unfortunate part is that our royalty has surpassed integrity. That, for example, you mentioned Mbadi. Mbadi is there because of royalty. He was a bodyguard to Mr. Museveni for so many years. The credibility of his education actually doesn't count. What counts is the royalty that he has. So it's upon us to create more civic awareness within the UPDF sections that, hey, look here, the interest of the country, you must protect your country. Well, we have African Union that constructs the AMNISON and other forces. The equity there must also be talked about if you're to talk about manipulation of our UPDF. There is no equity. The payment, actually, if you want to protect them, you should protect their payment, that they should get all their money as they work for it on the front lines, instead of being manipulated by the top officers within the UPDF and within other ranks. So, as Martin Luther said, a nation that you see that is investing more money in military defense is facing a spiritual death.
Have you had a look at the USA national budget?
Yes, I have.
They spend almost, actually, their biggest chunk goes to defense.
They spend equal money in their social
Maybe
economic
you're also
programs.
not excluding US aid, such as a maybe US aid
Because
also facing spiritual death.
Because my point is that countries worldwide or nationwide have gone ahead to look at
Invest more in the defense.
their sovereignty as something very important. So Uganda is no exception.
Whatever you want to defend has underlying factors. You must work on those underlying factors of the that will mitigate the threats that you have.
Because now threats like terrorism, that a country could be innocent, but because there's this group that has certain jihadist, ideologies, they simply want to undermine your government because maybe you are not.
There is nothing like ignorance, or we are not innocent even in the matter. Because the fact that we are, let's say the Arab Spring happened and you were part of that Arab Spring, the Islamism, the people who are advancing Islamism, like the ISIS, and they'll come and the Al-Qaedas, they'll come and do revenge on your ground. That's what is happening. So if you don't provoke wars, you never have those wars. And the cost is actually on citizens, as you notified earlier, that the burden of plundering in Congo is upon us and the next generations. So we should be cautious. We should engage these UPDF. They should be here discussing with us. We should engage them that, hey, look here. We can awaken their consciousness one by one. We can begin with this space that we have. Let's engage them. Because if we keep isolated, or if we isolate them without engaging them and we discuss alone, we are actually not doing anything. I'm looking at the sustainability of the proposals that we are making.
So they must be on the same table with us for us to find a solution. Winnie, let's just wrap this up and move to NSSF. Okay. And the question is that when you look at the UPDF coming into operations that should have been carried out by a civilian-led security force, like maybe Uganda police and things like that, is it an indictment on the security forces like Uganda police that should have been able to regulate the electoral process, that should have been able to, I mean, in every instant that we see the UPDF coming in, is it an indictment on, or is it a failure on the security organs that should have been filling that particular role? But also, as we conclude, how do you evaluate the relationship between the UPDF and other security organs like the
Prison.
like the prisons? And so just those two questions, then we.
Okay, before I respond to those questions, I just want to add on something to
Sure.
what you said. For matters of the spirit of Pan-Africanism, the UPDF has to actually work with other countries also. If we are to actually affect the terms of international relations, because however much we are fighting for our country, we need to also ensure that the countries that are closer to us are also safe. If at all we are to keep that diplomatic mission and also keep our countries at par, because we have different interests, but however much we are protecting our interests, we also need to look into the interests of our countries because it feeds into our country and our development as a country. Yeah. So for the purposes of that, I would really say that it's beyond just UPDF and protecting the country, but then let's look at it from a view of international relations. What's our relationship with our countries? And it's not that when they go there, they go to look for trouble. There's always consequences in everything. So let's just see it as from a view that however much they go for those missions, there's always going to be a repercussion. It may either be positive or negative, but then it also draws back to what relationship have we drawn with the countries that we've helped at the moment. But then drawing back to your question, Kidega, UPDF, at what point does UPDF come in when different other forces are working and applying? So having been someone who was born and raised in a barrack setting, I'll draw my experience basically on, for example, scenarios where like maybe there's been violence and maybe the police has failed to handle, or maybe the prisons has failed to handle. That's circumstances where the military needs to come in. But it should only come in on scenarios where these parties have failed to take on and also have failed to ensure that peace reigns at that particular institution, or maybe something is happening or a situation is happening that has gone out of hand. But reluctantly saying that a situation is happening and UPDF comes and takes over, that is something that draws a negative angle to the mandate and also the strength of these other institutions. It brings in an aspect where it actually, how can I say it? It brings, for example, like it breaks the faith and the trust of the citizens in the service, in the force that is supposed to protect them. That's why at some point you see there's so much clashes in terms of a situation is happening. There's scenarios where you find a particular community saying, bring the UPDF, they're the only ones who can protect us. They're the only ones who can come this. And then when it goes to, for example, Makerere is okay with the police because they believe the police is not that violent at that point. But there are scenarios where they believe that what? The UPDF is better, well placed in position to come and what? Calm the situation. But I say, situations call for who is supposed to come and adhere to it. So the scenarios where the police can adjust and calm the situation, and we should leave them to do so. But only in scenarios where the situation has over-heightened, that is when another party needs to come in and offer support. But then relationship-wise, in terms of the different forces working hand in hand, I believe there is a very big clash because if we are to focus on the mandate of these different institutions, for example, the police, their role is to keep law and order in the different communities. The prison services, their work is to take care of the prisoners,
or those who are on remand,
and ensuring that they're taken to court, like protected while in the incarceration, and then the UPDF whose work and the mandate is to protect the territory. Now you realize that currently all these forces are like, especially between the police and the UPDF, their roles are clashing at some point. I know the independent bodies and their roles are clearly stated, but because of the earlier discussion we had, politicizing everything, you realize that everyone wants to do what the other is doing, and that is bringing a lot of clashes, not just at the junior levels, but then also at the top management, because that is something that is infringing on the works of these different institutions. And if it's not addressed, then that's going to be a very big issue that will actually cause more violence than what we're already actually seeing in the country. So there has to be a clear labeled line in between the jurisdiction of what the police can do and what the military can do, and at what level, at what extent can they come to support the other, or maybe come in when the other fails, because it also brings out what the citizens view in terms of what these forces are supposed to do for the citizens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see,
very
police,
brilliant.
the police is even being supported by UPDF in terms of management, because we always have the IGP, the soldier, deputy IGP, the soldier. They have captured the police.
Now that is where the roles, that's why earlier on you said, like, Uganda has very good laws, very good policies, and the mandates are clearly and well stipulated on papers. But the implementation bit, there is no boundary. There's no boundary on what this institution does, what this one does. Everyone wants to do the other because of the clashing and the feel about politicizing everything. The fact that there's already politics involved, everyone feels that they can be superior over the other. And that is why you get to realize that the managements are actually being like interfered, like intertwined, like we find this and this and this. But then if there's clear demarcations and we follow by the laws and the policy, the regulations, the mandates of what these institutions are supposed to do, then we wouldn't really be having these issues.
Wow, very interesting, very brilliant submissions there. Tusubira, let us begin with you as we shift gears towards the National Social Security Fund.
Maybe before we go there, I just wanted to mention that the UPDF at 42 is something that it's not to the people. As the citizens, we are not feeling it very well. Why? Because of the public relation that UPDF has put. It has created something else. It is good that in the past years, for example, in 2021, UPDF was using Tarehe Sita to build schools, to build dormitories, to clean. Now that was, yes, good. They were trying to rebuild their public relations. I want to advise that the UPDF should do more of that. What if we had building of the hospitals by the UPDF construction company at a free cost without paying them?
Social corporate.
Yes, something of that sort. Let them do more of that. That was my last one.
Surely, we cannot get done with this conversation, but on Twitter, we know that hashtag Youth Roundtable is where we can have this conversation much more. But to me, just to wrap up UPDF, I think to me, the humbling moment to me about the UPDF was when the CDF former General David Moise came out to apologize to Ugandans for certain incidents. To me, I felt that was actually a people's, force. But anyway, away from that, let us shift gears to the National Social Security Fund. And Tusubira, I'll just start with you. Job Richard Matua, the famous petitioner, in this case, came out to raise certain issues, around misappropriation of funds, around mismanagement of the institution, amongst other things. I don't know if you save, but if you do, then you know that your hard-earned money that you save every month should not just be misused like that, all right? And if there are any allegations of mismanagement, then it should be of concern to you as a saver. So just kick us off with this. What do you know about the NSSF saga?
First of all, my opinion about it all is that this is a fight that is being caused because of lack of good character and overwhelming ambition. Is it ambition or interest? Having a lot of interest. But as a young youth who has only saved a little yet, I only saved once. I saved in my senior sixth vacation. I worked for a company and I was required to save. In fact, which again brings me to the fact that sometimes we are forced to save. It is good that we prepare for our future, but we are being forced to save. Even when you don't want, you find yourself saving. Because I was receiving very less money. It was very little. But again, they had to deduct some to go to NSSF. And now if again, with the way I am saving, not with my whole willing, and then I find out this money sometimes is being used in the wrong ways.
It's really upsetting.
But what I know about the NSSF saga is that there is a power struggle, because we started seeing most of it when there was reappointments. When the executive director needed to be reappointed for him to go back to the position, we started noticing that the minister is not in good terms. There had been things, because afterwards I read I read some petitioner who had already petitioned in 2019, speaking about the character of the managing director, the way he disrespects his whole board. Now it is according to what
Byarugaba?
Yes. It is according to what I read. One of the board members had reported and was petitioning and requesting that action should be taken against Byarugaba. According to him, the character of Byarugaba is generally bad, because he feels he has all the powers. He disrespects the board where he's only a member as executive director. In his words, the petitioner said, he disrespects the chairman of the board and their decisions. One of the things that I got from there is that they were fighting for some bill in parliament to be changed somehow, and then the executive director went behind their backs to advise the finance minister to act contrary to what they had advised parliament and executive to do. I don't want to overpin the executive director, because it is between two people. There is the minister in charge of gender, labor and social development, Honorable Amungi. That rift, according to me, I still feel there are very many things underlying. There are very many things behind there, because it starts at the point where the whole board goes to Kapeka, and there's a deal where they want NADS to be part of the NSSF and the wealth creation. It also comes in again, Salim Saleh, where there are a lot of powers there, you all understand. So it is something so big that even goes towards the point where Ministry of Finance needed some money from NSSF to fund the budget, which the minister has recently rejected. That for us, we've never wanted money, but there were rumors, you all know, that somewhere, somehow, government wanted to borrow from the NSSF, people's savings, because they are there, that maybe that interest would help them grow. But generally,
So,
that is...
to you, by and large, it is a power struggle.
It is power struggle.
All right.
Which is caused by people not having good character and leadership skills, but also having overwhelming interests.
All right.
Personal interests.
Fair enough. Oremo, the NSSF is worth 17.88 trillion. All right. Our national budget for this financial year that is ending was around 43 trillion. So NSSF, in its capacity, has or can fund half of our national budget, all right? So this is a very crucial institution that we must have interest in. But the question I want to put to you is, as we evaluate the Honorable Winnie Parker Probe Commission, as a citizen, what would you want the commission to focus on? Should it focus on the issues like reappointment of the ED who had reached mandatory age by law? Or there are other issues that it must focus on? For example, how do we get more Ugandans to save? So, I don't know, what should the committee focus on critically?
Yes, thank you very much once again. To me, first and foremost, people must understand why the fund was created, NSSF.
Yes.
NSSF was basically created to ensure that as Ugandans, as people, who are working, or the working class, should be in position to have money saved, which could help them in times when they have uncertainties before their lives. But also the money could be used by government to push the major agenda that we have as a country, and that is social and economic transformation of this country. Because the government has all the capacity and the ability to borrow the money from NSSF, put it into investment, and sometimes pay them back. Now, the committee that is being headed by Winnie Mpaka, just like you've asked me, should at this point in time be questioning the insensitives and the incapacity in NSSF. I want to let you know that NSSF, the manner in which it is being run, has got a lot of lackluster, and it has to be dealt with as soon as possible if the goals of the formation of NSSF is to be achieved. Because if the whole, we have very good brains at NSSF. If all those brains can decide to go and inject, in a single building, there in Ulgoa, a single building is having over 1 billion shillings. Buildings which cannot be actually used by Ugandans. And they are saying we are doing investments to bring back income to the savers so that they can get more money for themselves. But you build buildings which are going to be seated there idle. No one is going to enter such buildings. A very, very small group of Ugandans can enter such buildings, and the would-be people who could enter such facilities are already what? Well settled. So they might not even see need in such buildings. So the question he was talking about, the question of the 6 billion shillings that the minister requested for, created a row between the minister and the executive director. But I don't know if the minister was honest with that submission as to why the money was requested for, but if she was honest, that is the best thing that NSSF would have accepted and acknowledged. Because just like you've said, we have a very big number of people who are in the working field in this country. We have over 15 million Ugandans working, but the people who are saving, the people who are saving are not even close to 2 million. They are a very small percentage of people saving. And you have said NSSF at that capacity with a very small number of people saving is raising near to a half of Uganda's national budget. What if we mobilize 15 million people to save with NSSF? That shows that if NSSF right now can draw strategies and the committee, that investigative committee, if it could drive NSSF to that direction of widening the base of saving from Ugandans, interesting people, because you must interest me to save before I can come to save. Any cause, any initiative needs to first get the appetite to hook the people. But I'm not going to come and save when I cannot access the money. I've seen examples of people who are frustrated. You want to access your money, you have broken your leg in a factory that allowed you to save there. You cannot access the money. Recently, you saw the saga which surrounded the aspect of midterm access to the funds. They didn't want to give the people the money. So we shall only widen the base when we make Ugandans appreciate the need of saving. And when we widen the base of saving, when we allow Ugandans to understand that it is important to save, this benefits Ugandans at individual basis, but also it benefits the country. Because if, let's say, if we had maybe 10 million people saving, how much would NSSF be raising? Close to 50 trillion plus, which could help us, run our projects, could help us run the different businesses that we are having. The other thing, which is highly, degenerating NSSF to a point where we shouldn't allow it to go to, is the power conflict and the question of loyalty. NSSF has 2 ministries that look after it on top there, because this is an agency that must report to these ministries. We have the Ministry of Finance, we have the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. So every time you see a question of, people are fighting to see loyalty, who do I report to? Do I report to Kasaija? Do I report to Betty Among? You realize that you will lose all the focus, but people will be dealing with the question of loyalty. So I believe the Winnie Mpaka committee should focus on cleaning NSSF, having steward leadership that serves the cause and objectives for the formation of NSSF. But also, because the Arugaba was exposed, this is a man who has served beyond his legal terms, the legal provisions in the law. he wants to extend his stay in power beyond what is provided for in the law. He has already served the 2 terms that is provided for, but he wants to add another term for himself. I think, Comrade Kidega, we need to deal with this country. We need to deal with this country. That after your 2 terms, there is a one sprouting Kidega who could be better than you. You know, this country is not for us who are in right now alone. There are people who are coming behind us, and we need to create systems that are functional. We cannot make NSSF Biarugaba. He calls it maybe Biarugabarization of NSSF. Something we shouldn't accept. Serve and go. So there must be implementation, a respect of legal provisions that provide for guidelines on how NSSF is supposed to be manned. And that is where the committee should put very keen focus on, so that we have a clean, sanitized, and steward body or steward fund. Thank you very much.
Wow, very interesting. Winnie, NSSF. The NSSF Act of 2005 gives the NSSF board mandate to invest this money. But the key word to me in that provision is that the investment must be reasonable. All right. So if you compare what the example he gave, the investment in, for example, Lubowa Estates, right, that has consumed so many billions of shillings to put up. You look at, for example, the NSSF investing in equities, but outside the country. So if as a young person who perhaps is saving with NSSF, what would you like to see NSSF invest your money in? Because the idea is that this money must be able to grow. All right. You save with NSSF, they invest it, it grows, that when you're getting back your money, the fund is not left empty. All right. So the aspect of investment is NSSF investing the workers' money appropriately.
I'll definitely say NSSF isn't really investing the workers' money appropriately. And also, if you're to base on the fact that it's supposed to be, their investments are supposed to be regulated by the Ministry of Finance and Planning. But nonetheless, you realize that they're really having wild investments, but then they're not realistic in the terms of what best fits the netizens, who are actually the people who are saving and actually like putting in their money there. And that is one of the key things that like turns off the young people. There's no motivation for young people to take on like their continuous savings because of such kinds of investment. Because however much they tally and do this investment, there's no output from it. For example, if you're to see, let's just give a raw example of a young person. You tell me you've bought for me a car, it is in Mombasa, you're supposed to ship it this side, but you're not showing me the evidence of the car, no receipt, no nothing. And you expect me, a young person, to continuously believe that the car has been bought, but I'm not seeing any picture, no nothing. That wouldn't really motivate me to invest more in that. And also, it wouldn't really show a good side for me to believe that you're actually doing something good for me. Now, that is where NSSF has made a mistake in terms of the investments. The investments need to be channeled into what really develops the netizens, what the young people, what the citizens, not just the young people, but also the veterans in the country can actually look into as tangible enough for them to get involved. Because also, however much the investments are supposed to be that tangible enough, and also targeting maybe external people in terms of the housings that they're doing. The ratings of the houses are far much too expensive for an ordinary young person who is, for example, how you said you're saving. You have a 300,000 shilling saving in NSSF. But these houses that are being constructed are worth $1,500 per month. Would you be able to go and live in such a housing? Would you be able to even like maybe encourage another young person? Like, for example, if you combine 10 of yourselves with 300,000 saving in the accounts, would you be able to live in such an apartment? No, there's no way you're going to do that. So literally, the investments need to be done in accordance with what the young people can also be part of, as well as the netizens and the citizens. Because of, if you're to even see the fluctuations in the shillings rate, like literally, it doesn't really make sense in terms of the investments that they're doing, because realistically, as a country, we are grappling. And also, if we are to see in terms of the losses like the 20% loss during the COVID period that NSSF faced. This is something that reflects back on what our finances are as the young people and also as the netizens. So it's something that really needs to influence in terms of the investment, in terms of channeling it to what would really work for us as a country, and also for us generally as young people. Basically, my conversations are basically supporting the young people.
Yeah.
Our investments really need to be included and something tangible that we can be part of.
Yeah.
Because these NSSF savings are something that you can actually get in the end. For example, if I start saving now at 26, I should put it like 7 years from now that I'll be able to get it. Like say, for example, 40 when I'm 40 or 50. But then if the investments they're doing right now doesn't really yield the outcome that I'm supposed to get when I clock to that age, then it makes no sense. It won't motivate me to get in there and also start continuously investing and also encourage others to do. So it really just needs to be tangible, small, but tangible enough to provide outputs and source out other people to be compliant with it, and also encourage masses to continuously do the same.
Yeah. Wow, very interesting. Robert, national social security. And to me, the key word is social security. That tomorrow, if you get caught up in a medical crisis, you should be able to use your savings to bail you out, all right? That tomorrow, if you are facing issues with, for example, tuition of your children, you should be able to access what you've saved over time, all right? So do you think the NSSF, in its current operational framework, offers a worker social security? Because given the midterm access, that you can only access this money midway, all right? So I don't know, the aspect of social security, is it really working out?
Yes, it is. One, we must know the core mandate of NSSF.
Okay.
It is to save your money of the workers. NSSF has workers' unions, it has government parastatals saving with NSSF. The motive, you know, Ugandans and Africans, we are financially indisciplined. Secondly, we don't even prioritize what should be done during that time. So realizing the framers of the NSSF Act saw it wise that we must have a social security fund that you are mandated to save with. That is the motive of, given our mortality rate, 42 or 60, and also the retirement age. If the retirement age, let's say, is 50 years, or 55 or 60, it was that you should get your money after retirement, which was a good cause, and which is still a good cause. So that is NSSF's core, to give you your money after, but in the process they are meant to invest your money in treasure bills, in bonds, in facilities like housing facilities, real estate business, so that you can get this money. But as the world has moved on, NSSF has also been amending. What it doesn't want to do is the blanket payout of the savings. I think that was the bickering during the midterm access, that we shall not do a blanket payout. As I talk now, I have my old auntie who contacted me that she wanted to get to NSSF. I told her, Auntie, you don't need to do that. There is an online platform that you can actually apply and get your money. And she got her money.
How much was it?
She got around 18 millions, given the period she had worked at the factory. So she got her money. The access to money has now been improved. It's a duty and our indictment to protect institutions against political interference, against egoism. What NSSF is facing is in every cell of our society and in every cell of our institution. There's been political interference in every institution. Richard has refused to retire deliberately because he is copying from Museveni, who refused to retire as well. If Museveni refused to retire, why would Richard retire?
You learn from them.
A bad example being set by the leadership is being copied. You remember, we have a patronage system in Uganda. Richard is a result of patronage. how he got that job, how he landed into that job. It's patronage that has actually entrenched in every cell of our society that we must actually break to overcome all these challenges that we are facing, all the decay of institutions that we are facing. So Richard refused to retire. This actually sparks the debate. NSSF has had long issues from JAMA. It had to rebrand itself. It has programs it's offering, like the Friends with Benefit, where retirees are given capacity building on what to do and alternative activities. It has credit facilities that Ugandans don't know, but they can access. So what it can do, it can disseminate this information of credit facilities. It has programs like the National Career Guidance that actually has also some other emulations. It has a women empowerment program that in case you have challenges, you can approach it and get some of this money. It has also outsourced money from MasterCard Foundation. This money should be put to use. It is also investing largely in women. NSSF is the largest contributor of women, or the largest saver of women. Shareholder. Yeah. It is also a shareholder in National Water. It is also a shareholder in Bank of Uganda. When Bank of Uganda wanted to recapitalize, it is NSSF that actually picked its money to recapitalize Bank of Uganda, additionally to other. So the role of NSSF cannot be underestimated.
I think even in, is it DFCU, one of those big banks?
It has shares all over big banks. So it's our duty as Ugandans to protect NSSF, because NSSF, by now, it wouldn't be even existing. The so-called mafias wanted to dismantle NSSF with the liberalization bill. The bill was actually giving the services of NSSF to the private players. We already have other private players like the insurance companies that are doing almost related work. We have remittance companies that are already doing this work. But they wanted to dismantle NSSF completely so that the savers will no longer be. I've told you the core problem is financial indiscipline of Ugandans. And right from our grandparents and parents. So NSSF is there to keep your money. I'm a voluntary saver with NSSF. Voluntarily. But I'm sure that I will get my money. So the root cause of NSSF is actually egoism, political interference. My sister has spoken about the trek to Kapeka, and also the other one. Why would Salim Saleh be doing in NSSF? These cheats that are coming from State House asking for money during political periods, fund this, must also come to an end, so that we must protect our money that has been saved with NSSF. But overall, NSSF is doing well in East Africa because it's everywhere. NSSF is everywhere. There is NSSF Kenya, NSSF Tanzania, Rwanda. They've actually won one of the best competitions. They've actually won one of the best competitions in terms of savers. What we should do is what my brother notified earlier. We should build a better collection base. There is a lot of informal sector and also companies cheating NSSF. So how do we get them to save? The law is, if a company has 5 people who are earning, they must save with NSSF. Whether they are underemployed.
I think that was changed actually. Even now, one person.
One person.
Yeah.
So, but there are so many companies. I worked for a company that I started to work with. It told me that it was saving with NSSF. Checking, doing some fact checking, it wasn't saving with NSSF. What do we do with those companies?
I think that's a good question. And Tusubira, I want to put it to you, because I was about to call him Honorable. Job Matua said that he now wants to petition UBC to remit 18 billion that it has not been remitting to NSSF for its workers. So I think the point that Robert is making is a crucial point. But on top of that, NSSF only has 1.3 million Ugandans saving with it. So 2 questions. How do we widen the saving base? But also, how do we force, or how do we have measures to ensure that the employer who is collecting your payee indeed remits that money to NSSF?
Thank you very much. I think I said it before. I've also served with NSSF. I'm currently not working. I'm a student, so I'm not serving. But when I used to work, in fact, even after, NSSF has evolved in a lot of ways. Whenever they would upload your money to your bank, whenever you get your money in the bank as a worker, you get a message, money has come. But also NSSF afterwards sends you a message that to notify you that the money has also been sent. Now, I think that has happened maybe in the past, but currently, if a worker is working and then their money is not being paid, you will notice because you will not be getting the messages. I was requested to go to NSSF to register with NSSF and then submit my details about NSSF. It is not the company that went to NSSF on my behalf. So the touch that I have with NSSF it is me and NSSF, not me through the company to the NSSF. NSSF only receives the money from the company, but you will always have that. Now, if there are instances where UBC has not been taking the money, it is very good that we have gotten to know. But I know that for sure that the workers themselves have been knowing that their monies have not been going to NSSF because they've not been receiving those messages. Now, this whole saga is only opening our eyes that there is, first of all, NSSF. Many people knew that yes, there is some NSSF. They didn't know what it does. It is a blessing in disguise. Now the young people are discussing NSSF. Boda guys are discussing NSSF. Now this is the time where the nail is red hot. It should be hit.
Yes, sir.
If there is anybody from NSSF listening to this, this is the time they should be sensitizing borders that, you know what, yes, the people at the top there are discussing this and this, but actually your money can be secure. It will not, and also you can voluntarily serve. Border men, riders, people working in the market, our mothers, our fathers who are working in the informal sector. It is the time that we have gotten to know that it is NSSF, it is important, it can do this and this, these possibilities here and there. This is the time when the message should reach out to them. Whereas we have a committee that is in parliament that is trying to solve the issue at the top. I am very confident that, yes, there are fights up there, but my 300 is still intact. And I know for sure it is growing because there's a time they increased it from 9% to 12. Was it 12 or 13? Interest rate. 12 point something. Yes, there are points. And in 2 months, they sent me a message. Your money has grown to this. I have little money there.
Yes, sir.
But I want to tell the young people that money is secure. Even if there are fights there, people are trying to borrow here and there, that your money, particularly as you, will always be there. And as we go on, leadership is becoming better and better there. There are mistakes here and there, but these mistakes are being resolved. And the weevils are being pulled out. Museveni always wants to use them as weevils. We are going to remove the weevils. But they are being removed out little by little. And even so, the money is is it also protected by the central?
By the deposit fund.
The deposit fund. So even if they stole it, your money will still be there.
Okay, fair enough. Just in 5 minutes, we should be out of here. But the aspect of how does this saga affect two entities? One is the potential saver that I am not saving as yet, but seeing what is happening, people asking for 6 billion, people doing this, is saver confidence and saver compliance going to be affected by this situation? But two, how does this affect the other institutions that NSSF is part of? Like you was mentioning, NSSF is a shareholder in so many entities. So how does this affect their shareholder position in these companies?
Yes, Comrade Kidega, when you want an initiative to fall, you do things that make you lose the confidence from the people or from the target you're having, maybe the target audience or the people, the stakeholders you're looking at. It is indeed going to have a very negative impact on NSSF because there's a lot of shoddiness and kangaroo kind of operation in NSSF. A young person watching, on TVs and, seeing this conversation come in newspapers and so on, seeing the kind of, mafiaism in NSSF will be reluctant in saving because he doesn't see the reason to save. He's saving, someone is adamantly refusing to leave the place, yet the allegations of mismanagement of the fund. You're saving your money, your little money. Someone is going to build a house which is beyond 1.5 billion shillings, where no one is going to enter. How will that house bring return on your little money you put on NSSF? Genuinely, it will affect because the target the minister was talking about is how they can reach out to Kidega Moses in Jinja to tell him, come and save with us at NSSF. But Kidega is informed. He has gotten exposed to all this kind of gangster kind of business in NSSF. How do you start telling me to come and save with you? I am reluctant. I can come, yes, but I'm reluctant. I'm going to ask myself a lot of questions. Will I receive this money? And also, it affects the brand of NSSF because it has entered into corporate contracts with very many organizations, very, very recognized institutions like the central bank and different big business entities. And they're seeing poor management. People don't want to leave office. There's a question of loyalty, fighting for attention here and there. Some people, of course, would withdraw their contracts, and that, of course, in the long run, would be affecting the progress of the fund.
Yeah.
So, I think it will have actually a negative impact.
Yeah, but we hope that they can, of course,
we only pray that they harmonize and get a workable procedure and methodology which they can apply to ensure that the fund grows for the greater good of this country.
Wow, thank you. Colleagues, our time is fast spent. But it's only practical that I give you guys 30 seconds each to give us your last words on the show. And I'll begin with Robert, Tusubira, Oremo, then...
I thought you were going to give the lady first.
All of them. No, just your parting shots generally.
Dear viewers, it's been a blessing for me to be here. But as Ruth said, if a nation is investing more money in military defense than its social welfare or the social well-being of citizens and the programs, just know that that nation is facing a spiritual death. One word to UPDF: stop abusing the wetlands, stop deforestation, stop being a tool of plundering and looting. And then to NSSF, it's our duty as citizens to save NSSF. For strong institutions, we must have NSSF because we've seen what it has done in the lives of people who have retired. And the example that Richard is copying is actually copying Mr. Museveni, who refused to retire. So Richard Byalugaba has also refused to retire because of the example that has been set by the top leadership. So it's upon us. We must look into these issues with an honest part of it, and the honest conversation must be held so that we save our country from the patronage that has entrenched in every cell of our society. Thank you.
Yes, Tusubira.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here. My last remarks is to the young people. We are at a point, at the age, where we should not be collecting for sympathies, for people to look at us as people who need to be pitied because we don't have this and that. We are at the point where we must have energy. It is the point where we think a lot. So I want to encourage us to work hard and more hard than we've been working so that we can transform our country. If you can join the army, join it, work hard, change what is there. If you can use your knowledge to be a witty person, enter NSSF, be a better leader, be a better Byalugaba, be a better... Yes, so because we are the ones that can change environment, and we are at the stage where we can change it best. He likes to use Martin Luther King Jr. In one of his speeches, he says about running, if you can run, please do. But if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But all you know, keep moving. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Everyone is ending with a quote.
That's fine. I want to, before saying anything, thank the management of Civic Space TV for giving platform to young people like us. But my message out there is going to the Honorable Minister for Defense, Honorable Bamulanga Chisempija, that you should draw strategies on how you are going to liberate our army, our national army from capture, and our army should be very, very non-partisan to protect the interests of this country, Uganda, protect the people, and ensure that people are safe instead of, causing abductions, trying people in court-martial, people who are not soldiers. Please keep our army out of it, and we don't want an army that will butcher people in Karamoja like we have been seeing, because they should be protecting us. We want to run to soldiers when we are in danger, not to run away from soldiers. Then the other thing is, my message on the question of NSSF is that we send our clarion call to people like Biarugaba to leave office and allow for another young person or someone else who is experienced to come and take up the spaces. But also the ministry should engage greatly in widening the base for the saving, so that we can raise money which could help government run some of the projects that we keep running to China, running to United States of America to look for money. Yet in actual sense we could save our money we use as we invest and bring it back to the fund. And of course, like the way Biarugaba doesn't want to leave office, perhaps he has a belief like other people have failed to believe that other leaders can come and take up spaces. And I want to create, I want to quote my grandfather, as he rests in his grave, Julius Kambarage Nyerere, who said that success without a successful successor is mythical success. That when you succeed alone as Biarugaba, as the executive director, maybe as the president of this country, and you're not allowing Kidega Moses to succeed you successfully, then you have failed. Thank you very much. We should adopt the aspect of moving on from projects, from things, and leave other people take space.
All right. Winnie, you have the last words on the show.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the women and the ladies, we're speaking last, but we'll speak further. But
you should have spoken first.
No, not really. It's very okay.
It's a privilege to actually speak last.
Yeah. So basically, my message to the people out there, especially to the young people, like our generation Z, the generation from 1990s after the war, let's ensure we take time to understand our history. Let's ground ourselves on information and ensure we enrich ourselves with every information we need to have in order for us to understand the dynamics of our countries and for us to be well acquainted with ways on how we can understand how the different institutions in our countries operate. And then also in terms of NSSF, I'd want to adjust the young people. Let's stay away from misinformation, because I know this NSSF is an institution that would greatly enrich us as young people 7 years from now. But then let us stay away from the misinformation. I know a house, Rome wasn't built in one day, but then it's upon us as the young people to take up and actually start saving with such institutions so that we're able to mold a future for ourselves and also try to reshape the country in terms of what positivity do we do in regards to ensuring that we use the right information and also seek further information that would actually attribute to our growth financially and also just generally and socially as young people in the country. Thank you. And thank you for hosting me.
Wow. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you, Robert, Comrade OO, Comrade Winnie, and Comrade Simon Peter. Thank you for sparing time to be on this week's episode of the Youth Roundtable. Of course, to our technical team, thank you for ensuring that our viewers get this show right on time. Since everyone was ending with a quote, to me I'll quote the late Reverend Desmond Tutu, who said that in whatever you do, just do right. Be it you're in the UPDF, you're in NSSF, just do right. Eventually this right will overwhelm the world. Well, that is it from us. Have a lovely Wednesday afternoon. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.